Just wanna feel purple, yellow, and cause everything just falls in place like that.
Welcome to the 15th episode of the Purple, Yellow, Red and Blue podcast, a Portugal.TheMan podcast. Each podcast I'm joined by a guest to talk about everything going on with Portugal.TheMan. We've got news, we've got social media activities, that sort of thing, music video releases, and things in the wider sphere relating to the band, with opinions and impressions from the guest. So each episode we have the PTM Song game to try and catch up the guest at the end, see if they're true hardcore fan. To also talk about their memories, experiences, and any cool stories. I'm sure we'll have some interesting ones today as well. You can find this podcast, past and future episodes up on YouTube, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. I need to check if Google Podcasts is still a thing, I'm not sure. Thank you to Liam, who does the artwork and thumbnails. My name is Mark, and my guest joining me today is...
Hey, my name is Daniel Troia. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I recently released a documentary called We Are All in This Together, and it's streaming on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and Google Play. And it's a documentary about riding my bike across America with no food, no money, and searching for human connection.
Hello, Daniel. Nice to actually chat to. It's been a little bit of a... We've had this one booked in for a little while. It's been good to finally sit down and actually talk to you about this your adventure and why it relates to Portugal.TheMan exactly. Because I didn't just pluck someone who's a documentarian on here, but for whatever reason, there's a certain specific reason. Obviously, go ahead and sort of explain it. But you use their music.
Yeah. So the entire soundtrack of the film is by Portugal.TheMan. And the funny thing is when I came up with the idea for making this documentary, I was riding my bike and I was listening to the song "Oh Boy" by Portugal.TheMan, and specifically at the end when John keeps saying, "Set yourself free, set yourself free, set yourself free." That like really stuck with me because I had this idea that I was kind of playing around with, and it was building for months, honestly. And then just hearing that song and those lyrics, it really just clicked. And I said, "I think I'm gonna go do this." So
That's the fact that you
yeah,
brought up "Oh Boy" is like, okay, he ticks the hardcore fan box already because so many people don't even know that's a song. So credit to you, awesome.
oh
But yeah,
yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, appreciate it.
I'm not the accreditor for whether or not you're a hardcore or not, but in my eyes, absolutely. So yeah, this podcast we're going to be talking about the documentary. If you haven't seen it already, it's on Amazon. Where else can you actually? Because I watched it on Amazon Prime in the UK. Where else can you watch it at the moment, Dan?
Yeah, um, Apple TV also and Google Play as well.
On Google Play, yeah.
Yeah.
You stream, rent. I rented it. Maybe it's on the other ones, but yeah, that's kind of how the way. But I'd highly recommend it. It was a very insightful hour and change. I can't exactly remember, hour and 20 odd minutes or something. So
Yeah,
it's been a
about an
little
hour and
while.
15 minutes. Yeah.
Hour 15.
Mhm.
Apologies. I should have the time written down
Yeah.
for that, but apparently not. But
Oh, it's all good.
it's all good. It's yeah. So yeah, all the music is from Portugal.TheMan, producer and starring Daniel Troia, who I'm with here, and your brother as well, Max. He was involved as well in some way.
Yeah,
Was
my
he editing? Was
yeah,
he?
my exactly. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up Max. He actually helped me with the intro. He helped me choose the news clips because the whole point of the film was to show the political division that's happening in the United States, right? And Max helped me edit together some nice news clips that showed all the division that's happening and been happening for a while here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. He was the only other name I saw on the credits, so I was like, well, I better bring him up as well. Then he seems pretty important. But yeah, that
Yeah.
intro of the current world events really sets the tone. I think, yeah, pretty well actually, and it kind of gives you reason. You kind of have a better understanding of what you go into it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. I mean, I'm not American. I can't fully
Yeah.
sympathize. I speak to plenty of Americans on a day-to-day basis, but it's been
Mhm.
taxing the last 8 years for you guys, maybe more, maybe longer. Yeah, so I sympathise. I've got some questions then, Dan. Throughout the
Yep.
documentary, I made some notes. I've got this. If you hear some paper, that's me folding it back and over. So I've got some points.
Oh.
I'm gonna start off. The documentary opens with some footage of, recent events, rallies, gatherings, and sadly some conflicts in public. We've already briefly mentioned this, but what was your what were you hoping for people to get out of that intro bit there? Were you trying to set the tone, or were you trying to say, look, this is what's going on in America? What was in your mind when you were like, okay, this is how I'm going to set it up? Because it's you put on a documentary, you see yourself riding a bike on the trailer, and you're like, this is a lot of political stuff. What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, yeah, I did want to set the tone. I mean, I really wanted people to feel the tension and division that's been happening in the country. And so I was showing video clips of, different political parties fighting, violence. I showed, protesters getting pepper sprayed at Standing Rock. Um, protesting different things. And, the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to use the song Smile as an opener because I just love the lyrics in that. And again, with this film, the songs that I chose for this film are directly involved with the message that I'm trying to put out there. And so I love when John says, I don't want to talk about the world, all right. I just want to sleep with a smile tonight. And I think that a lot of Americans for a long time, we don't want to talk about what's happening in the world because it makes us uncomfortable or sad, so we just don't do anything about it. And so I thought it was very fitting to kind of use that music and show all the division that was happening in the country.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get. I want to go deeper into Portugal the Man stuff, kind of towards the back end. I've still got some more base questions
Got it.
for you, but I have a list
Yep.
and I have timestamps for all the songs, by the way. So I'm going to I might
Oh,
actually
cool.
test you to see if you remember when they are and in what order. So that would be interesting.
Yep.
Big In the Mountain in the Cloud fan, I see. Yeah.
Well said.
Um. Yeah, you mentioned about saying yourself and fellow Americans have been feeling the tensions and uh, that's been happening, and you ask the question, sorry, how connected we really are, and at times we are truly divided, as it kind of seems. Yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from immediately. We live in such a, I wouldn't say bad time. It's a weird time. It's maybe a hard time. I don't know. I, I
Hmm.
I don't know. I really like the intro because it really does. I don't want to keep saying set the tone correctly, but I think you did a good job of that because I was like, okay, I kind of get where he's coming from with this, what he's talking about, what he's trying to put across, and yeah, I mean, as an outsider, I was like, okay, I'm with it. It gets a little bit more cheery after that, so it was quite nice. It wasn't all downer, 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 but hey, this is
Hmm.
modern society.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, man. And part of it was too, like, in some ways, I mean, while I was making this documentary, I mean, I was feeling a lot of anger about the state of the country, and specifically the way that certain politicians are just trying to divide us, for their own political gain. And so when I first decided to go out, set out and do this, like, it was almost like an fu to the politicians and also the news stations that were, they're creating this narrative about the division in the country, and they're making it worse by um just reporting on all the fear mongering, amongst politicians and news stations, to, fear people who are different than you, fear the immigrants, etc. And so I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to like harness that anger that I was feeling, and try to like turn it into something positive. And again, a response of like, no, we're not as divided as you say we are. That was kind of like the goal of the documentary.
Yeah, and you mentioned about that the hatred and the anger and everything, and we'll get to it later as we go through the topics, but you definitely felt it, and you definitely could see
Mm.
it as well with like I like the way because you use a GoPro camera for like the face to face conversations. When you were doing those interactions throughout the documentary, I can't remember the like eight to 10 people, whatever. You have those like very close kind of face to face. You know, you're almost in first person as Daniel, and you're like, oh, you got this woman looking at you, this man looking at you, got this person looking at you, and you know you can see the kind of emotions on their face. They're looking at you and they're like, oh, you're doing this, oh, that's incredible, or, oh, you need food or you need shelter, you need money, etc. What did you do for that? Because obviously, you know, it's not like 2005 anymore. Like you start waving a camera around, people get it's a little bit more normal nowadays. But what did you do with that? Did you like have it? Did you have like a lapel pin or what? What did you do for that? Because
Yeah. No, great question, Mark. Yeah, so basically, I set off from my house with no food or money, with the goal of getting across the country on my bike.
hmm.
I had a sign that said, "Biking across country, ran out of food. Anything helps." And I didn't want people to know in the moment that I was making a documentary. So what I did, I actually had hidden camera glasses, right? In these
Ah,
yeah, so that's how I was getting that footage with people. So they didn't know, while like, and if I was fortunate to receive help from somebody, I'd say, "Hey, do you have a story about when somebody, helped you when you really needed it?" And I was standing out in front of grocery stores and talking to people, and then afterwards, after they would share, if I was fortunate to receive help and they'd share a story, I'd say, "Hey, I'm actually making a documentary. May I use this footage?" And that's how I went about it. Because
oh, I see.
again, I wanted to be able to, yeah, I really wanted to be able to capture like the genuine, like the real interactions, raw interactions of being out there. And so I thought, hidden camera glasses was going to be my best option as far as those kind of interactions. And then I did use a GoPro on my chest when I was riding my bike to kind of give the viewer the first person view, and then I brought a drone with me too, to that I programmed with my phone to follow me, like, so I'd be in the desert, for example, and I would kind of like have the drone like make a circle around me and give me kind of like cool footage that way. So that's how
Mm.
I went about yeah, filming this.
Yeah, you're you're actually one step ahead of me. My next question was going to be: you go you go across country biking without any food or water, just with these
Oh.
basic supplies. You took a little bit of. Did you take
Yep.
a little bit of water just to get you started, obviously, and then I can't remember now.
Yeah,
I
so
believe you did.
the
Yeah.
good question, actually. Yeah, water. I didn't even. I never even thought about it. I did take. I had 4 bottles of water when I left. Didn't have any food, but I definitely had the water. Yeah.
All right. That's. I was going to say
Yep.
that is if you're traveling without water and you're biking, you're playing a dangerous game, especially when you're starting off in California. Yeah, as you mentioned, you
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
sign, the tent, the sleeping bag, the crockery gear, the bike maintenance, and then the filming, which is the cameras, the GoPro, and everything. I did notice quite
yeah.
funny when you were in a very rural area, you would like put the camera down on like the side of the road and like drive like pedal past it. And I know you did that because you would look over to be like, is someone taking that? Is anyone taking it? You would just double. I could see the little looks like, I just better make sure no one's running off with that, even though you're sure you're in a pretty deserted area.
Yeah, that's funny, man. That was the magic of filmmaking. You just like set the camera up on like a rock and then just ride your bike past it. That's what I did many, many times. And
Those
the funny thing
transition
is, I
shots,
tried
though,
not to do it.
yeah, yeah,
What's
they
that?
were good. Those like transition
Oh,
shots
appreciate it,
that
man.
you just kind of you got to
Thanks.
like piece together. It's like I'm in California, I'm in New York. You kind of got to piece it a little bit. Oh, I'm in the desert, I'm out of the desert, I'm in the desert, I'm in a car. You know, you need those. Oh, I'm going up a mountain, I'm coming down a mountain. Jesus, it's too warm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely, man. And that was again because I went alone. I was trying to be I wanted to make it raw in some ways as well, to where, so you could tell, like, yeah, it is just him, making this out there, because I wanted, it's if there was a crew with me, etc., it just wouldn't have been real, you know what I mean? So I thought, okay, I'll try the best I can do just by myself. And sometimes it said, yeah, put the camera, rest it on on a stop sign or something, and then ride your bike past it.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea actually. I think I've seen it in other like documentaries and films. They do those kind of those shots. So maybe, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was good. I was curious. I just always saw you looking over, like, oh, shit, definitely, you know. Um, how many miles was the total length of the journey? And probably at this point, we're going to go into spoiler territory from now on. So
Yeah.
I'm going to give everyone a few seconds. Maybe go pause this, go watch it, and then maybe come back. All right. So yeah, the what was the total length of the journey? Because you rode from Monterey, California to I'm not great
Yeah.
where in New York exactly. You actually rode around in New York for a little while, so you really did make sure you were in New York, and then you came back home. But how many miles was that in
Yeah.
total?
Yeah, so originally I was just planning on riding to New York City by itself. That was the goal, right? And so I spent 3.5 months riding across the country. And when I got to New York, there was just a feeling of like, man, I think there's something missing that I didn't experience. So I think I'm gonna try to ride back. So I ended up coming all the way back too. So actually I rode my bike 5,700 miles, and then I did hitchhike. I hitchhiked 1,300 miles, and the reason I hitchhiked was because once I got to New York City, I realized that okay, if I'm gonna try to make it home, I have to cross the Rocky Mountains, and it's gonna be snowing soon. So I figured, okay, if I can
Mm.
hitchhike, some of the way, then that will get me across the Rockies before or near the Rockies before it starts snowing. And the ironic thing was I still didn't make it over the Rockies. It was already snowing by the time I got there. But yeah, so that it was 5,700 miles of riding and then 1,300 miles of hitchhiking.
That's insane, mate. Honestly, like
Mhm.
5,700 miles. Your ass must have been. I don't know how you managed that. I mean, fair
Hey,
play. I
I'll
see
tell
why
you,
you were
man, my
hitchhiking.
butt, yeah, my butt is still sore from that ride.
Oh God, yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of minutes into the documentary. We actually meet three people. Basically, you meet the three people, and you're kind of asking them for help. Also, ask them when they help someone. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and you were asking for any memorable responses that maybe the documentary didn't pick up. Any during the documentary that you want to kind of highlight during.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for sure, the one that stood out to me the most that wasn't in the documentary, I wasn't able to film it. I was riding through East St. Louis, which that's an area of the country where there's just so much poverty and crime and drugs and gangs and things like that, unfortunately. And it's really sad because that area just seems like it's been forgotten, And I was riding through this area with just abandoned buildings, etc. And then this guy like yells at me from across the street. He's like, "Hey man," he's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just passing through the neighborhood," And he comes up to me and starts just instantly just telling me like his story, And his name was Harold, and he was 24 years old, and he had just gotten out of prison. He was in prison for 6 years, and he couldn't find a job, and he was sleeping under a bridge, and like his clothes were like in tatters, right? And he was only 24 years old, and he said he starts crying, like sobbing, saying how he's terrified to go to sleep at night because he was he was traumatized from what happened in prison. And then he lifted up his shirt, and he had this scar from his chest down to below his stomach, and he said that he was stabbed in prison, right? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, "I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around for," and it was so impactful for me because he was only 24 years old. And when I met him, I was thinking about, man, when I was 24 years old, like I was like backpacking around Europe. I had all those opportunities and stuff. And Harold, unfortunately, was just born into like a really rough situation. He was born into poverty, and then like him and his family, it seemed like they couldn't get out of it. And it just, I couldn't stop thinking about at 24, man, your life is just starting. And the fact that he was saying like his life was already over was super impactful. And I'm so grateful to have met him because he definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things. And but yeah, that's one of the interactions that stood out to me that I wasn't able to capture, and put in the movie.
Wow, that's crazy. Honestly, being 24 and like you are basically an adult, basically from 24, 25. Your brain
Yeah,
is formed. You're in society. And life
yeah.
is just man, being in prison for 6 years as well from 18. Like you are, they are just not going to be kind to you as well from 18. It's just I just can't
Oh
imagine
yeah,
that. That's just yeah, it's difficult, and unfortunately, when there are hard times, it pushes people to do, make difficult choices. Sometimes the wrong choices, and like yeah, I don't want to know why or how, or whatever reason he was in prison or whatever, favorably or
Yeah.
unfavorably, fairly or whatever. But it's just not, that's just it's not going to set him up for life properly, is it? And especially like, oh, you were in prison for 6 years. What is he going to do for like work and things like that and family and
Exactly.
yeah, it's brutal,
Exactly,
man.
man. That's what he
Honestly,
was saying. And the crazy thing about all this is 10 miles west of there. What I was riding through neighborhoods that were literally mansions, and it was just crazy to think like this is just like right down the road, and how can there be so much money for those neighborhoods, but there's nothing in East St. Louis. This place is just forgotten. It was really strange to see that.
yeah. Gosh. I was curious because yeah, I remember earlier. I think it might be this. You were outside of a supermarket or a superstore, as you guys would say. Um,
Mhm.
and maybe like an elderly woman. I'd probably put her around 65. Walks up to you.
Yeah.
I can't. Gosh, I'm forgetting her name. I actually didn't make a note of this, but I'm remembering it on the spot. And she talks
Yep.
about
Yep.
she had a. It was a husband or a son. One of them was named Daniel as well, and you had that
Yeah.
connection. And it was actually one of the longer conversations you had in the documentary as well. Do you want to tell everyone a little
Yeah.
bit about what happened with that? Because I think it's pretty poignant.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it, man. So I was in the state of Indiana, and this woman said, "Oh, my son, he wanted to do a cross country ride." I said, "Oh, cool, that's awesome." And she said, "I said, what was your what's or I said, what's your son's name?" And she said, or no, I'm sorry. She asked me my name. She said, "What's your name?" I said, "My name is Daniel." And then within a second, she starts crying and says, "That was the name of my son. He just passed away," and she started expressing just how difficult it's been, dealing with the grief of losing her son. And I felt, and that's like a story that those kind of moments took me by surprise. There was a lot of really super vulnerable moments to share with these complete strangers, and I felt so honored to have the opportunity to like have these conversations with them, and like, so she opened up to me about her son, and it was super special because I felt like, man, like 30 seconds ago, she was just this person walking by, and then just giving each other the space and time to listen to each other. And I just felt like we felt so much more connected after sharing that moment. And there was a lot of really beautiful moments, not just about grief either. I mean, there was also some really beautiful moments of kindness and compassion that I was really fortunate to experience from complete strangers. And yeah, I felt so grateful for that. And there was a lot of serendipity with this experience too. Like after I met her name was Jean. The next town I
Gee, thank you.
stopped in the next day, the very first person who helped me, he was a refugee from Africa, right? And his name was Daniel. I thought, oh my gosh, how ironic is this? We just had this huge conversation about, Jean's son Daniel. Oh, and I also said when I finished speaking with her, the last thing I said to her was, Daniel. I said he's gonna be riding with me in spirit, right? And then the very
Hmm.
next person I met, his name was Daniel.
That's weird. That's kind of weird.
Yeah,
It's a small world. That's
yeah, yeah,
yeah. That was a
yeah,
poignant moment. I can't exactly remember how long it is into the documentary, but it's definitely. I think it's the person that made me like. Uh, it caught me, to be honest, a little bit. I was like, wow, this is very revealing, and maybe
yeah,
sometimes maybe you ask yourself, would you really say that to a stranger? And maybe some people are maybe just feeling a certain way on a day, and they just need to reach out, and we're all in this together, as your documentary says, to use the name. Yeah, and it was
mhm.
gosh, it was a really strong moment. Yeah, and I think I had to pause after that because I was like, oh, I was just like I wasn't expecting that. Like you hit me with a gut punch of that. That was
Yeah,
a sad moment. Yeah, I
yeah, definitely. It hit me too, man. Definitely. Yeah, and it makes me think about. I did start to notice that it seemed like the people who were reaching out and helping were the people who had like they had experienced pain in their own lives, and it seems like in some ways they wanted to help somebody else because they've been through difficult times in their own life. because the more time I
Mm.
spent on the road, it seemed like the majority of people who were reaching out, they had stories about hardships that they'd faced in their own life.
You've mentioned this on other podcasts that I've listened to as well to try and prepare for this one, and you mentioned the same thing as
Hmm.
well. So it must have been pretty prevalent for you to recognise that. I've got quite a
Yeah. Mhm.
I've got a simple question but a deep one for you, Daniel.
Yeah.
How would you like to
Yeah.
be remembered?
Oh man. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, interesting. Yeah, I would love it if just people, I mean, if people thought of me and thought, what, I want to like step up and help somebody out, because like there was this whole experience being able to document it. I would love it if people took away, I just want to treat people better, and it's those small moments that I think can really create change, because there's so many like outrageous things that are happening in the world right now, and I've shared this before, like it's so many things feel like they're out of our control, right? And but like these day-to-day interactions with people that we come in contact, like that's something that we can totally control, and we can control how we treat each other, right? And I would love it if people saw the film and just thought, on in my day-to-day conversations with people, whether I'm checking out at the grocery store, or I'm at work, or I'm doing whatever, like just being aware of the people around you and just being respectful and kind, and realizing that, like, if we can show up for each other in times when we need it, right? And like, for example, like my dad was dying of cancer like a couple of years ago, right? And like I was feeling very sad in those moments. And I remember I used to work with this bartender who I wasn't very close with, but we were throwing out the trash in the back of the restaurant one night, and he comes up to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, "Hey man, I just want to let you know that you're very loved here and we care about you," right? And hearing that from him, where we had never spoke on any deep level ever, like that was life changing for me, because he showed up and he let me know, like, hey, you're loved and we care about you. And that's something that these people, when I was on the road, they taught me that we can all be that person who shows up for somebody else, and like we can literally change their lives. And it's not just about like giving someone food or money. It could be the small things, like just checking in with somebody if you can tell that their energy's off or something.
Yeah, I definitely think of the last couple of years as well. You mentioned about respect and caring. I think we've lost a little bit of that. Definitely not just in
Hmm.
America, definitely in the rest of the world, especially in my small
Hmm.
island over here in Blighty. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It just
Yeah.
feels like people just more selfish. Maybe because you know hard times makes hard men. I don't know. Maybe people just not. I don't know what the correct word is, way to say it, but I don't know. There is something. There's something not right. I don't know, and people need to be better. And I always think I'm like the little things I do, like little things to help. Like I could always do a little more, but I'm glad I did something. Just make a little bit of a difference. If it is, you know, like helping someone who's in like a wheelchair, just like get through a like bad pavement, a road or something, or like, yeah, I don't know, just like just talking to people or something, or just like hearing them out, just listening. I'm always good for that. I'm always
Yeah,
good for a
just
message.
listening
People,
sometimes.
yeah,
That's a great
uh,
point, man. I think just being there, as someone to listen to, and even like it makes me think about, like, let's say there's someone on the street corner with a sign, right? Even if you have nothing to give, or if you don't want to give, let's say, like, just kind of having a smile and saying "Have a nice day," because as time went on, like, I grew a beard and it was getting longer, and I was receiving less help because of the beard. There were people, even if they had nothing to give, if they would just kind of like acknowledge me and say "Have a nice day," like that mattered, and I felt like seen and acknowledged as a person. Again, I think that we could all do those small kind of things, just acknowledging each other, and I think it'll make a difference. And kind of touching on what you were saying earlier, man, is it does feel like there's a lot of division, not just in the United States but everywhere. My personal opinion is I think that we're not communicating in person as often as we used to at all. I think a lot of our communications now are virtually, right, and through text messages and things like that. And I feel like we're not gathering as much as we used to. And I think that in some ways that helps us, or that makes us lose like a sense of community, that we used to have. And I think that's why people are being more rude to each other, because we're not having those small, micro interactions like we used to all the time. And I think it's super important to like, we need to connect with each other in person. That's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, partially we couldn't do anything about the global pandemic that happened 4 years ago.
For sure.
That definitely
For sure.
triggered something and fast forwarded a lot.
You're right. Yeah,
But
that's a
yeah, to
great
be
point. The pandemic definitely made it worse.
yeah, brought things forward. So to be remembered, you said, reminder. Sorry, it was I was going to say
Yeah, I
just to
mean,
travel more. That wasn't the point. Apologies.
yeah, no, I mean, it'd be the biggest honor ever if just to be remembered as someone like it's just a reminder to treat each other better, treat each other
Awesome.
better. And again, I was so fortunate to have these interactions with some really amazing people who changed my life. And it was really cool to be able to celebrate their compassion and kindness in this movie. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Early on in the documentary, you stop at a man in a truck who offers you two waters and two bars, like
Like
nutritional
energy
bars.
bars. Yeah.
Yeah, could be. Did did he know you? Because he seemed very friendly for someone just stopping the side of the road. Here's some food and some water, stranger. You know, did he know you at all?
Yeah.
What was the story there?
No, no. Yeah, that was in the desert when I first got in the desert. And he just saw me riding my bike, and I guess he drove past me, and then he just waited on like the next pull out. He pulled over or whatever, and then he just thought, he looked at it as an opportunity to do something kind. And again, it's moments like that, like there was people who did that along the way randomly, and I thought like, whoa, shoot, like what's cool is like I can be that person going forward. Like if I see somebody, and it doesn't have to do with cycling, but again, just like showing up for someone and just being like doing something kind. And it's amazing because I know that he also, I think I noticed as well, was the people who were giving, like you could feel their energy changing once they helped, and you could see how good they were feeling afterwards. So it's really beautiful. I mean, the people giving sometimes receive more from giving than the actual person they're giving to. And those people, they taught me that.
Yeah, I thought it was a very kind gesture that you just don't.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not biking around halfway around the US, but I just wasn't really expecting that sort of level of um, gratitude from anyone really. So that was
Yeah.
cool to see because
Yeah.
when your head's down and things aren't looking great, something like that, a little perk up, a little pick me up is it's kind of what you need. I
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really threw
Well,
me off.
same.
I was like, wow, what is it like? That's the sort of thing I'd expect like a family member to do, and this is just a complete
Yeah,
stranger.
yeah.
Like if you're running a marathon, like I've got
Exactly.
you some water, I've got you an energy bar, go kill it.
Yep.
Keep running, Dan, but keep pedaling.
Yep.
The downhill stretches looked amazing, and I bet they were just fucking amazing. They look brilliant.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about them a
Yeah,
little bit?
man. Like, yeah, for sure, Mark. Thanks for asking. So yeah, I mean, especially because when I was out in the Colorado Rockies, for example, and some of these mountain passes, you're spending literally 5 hours climbing up the mountain, right? And then when you finally get to the top, and then you reach that downhill, it's just so exhilarating. And you feel a sense of accomplishment too, because you're like, man, I worked so hard for this, and now I get to enjoy this downhill. And some of them were fast, which I love that feeling. It's kind of one of those things like, you say the expression, it made me feel like a kid again. I mean, riding my bike
Oh
down
yeah,
a hill and going fast, like that still to this moment, like it gives me that feeling, of feeling like a child again, So it's pretty sweet. Do you have anything that makes you feel like a kid again?
that's a really good question, actually. uh, I don't know. I don't really think so. I've definitely felt more nostalgic in the last couple of months for the first time in my
Uh-huh.
life.
Yeah.
So just going
Yeah.
back to things, I in 2018 did quite a bit of changing in life. I basically since from that point to now, I'm probably 95% a different person. I just changed my personality,
Wow.
my physique. Yeah, I lost quite a bit of weight in quite a dire situation where quite a lot of negative things were happening, and I used it as like as encouragement, as motivation to actually
Uh-huh.
do more. I basically lost something uh like 50 pounds, maybe 55, something like that, which is
Oh
like
man.
four
Uh-huh.
stone. Yeah, it was.
Yep.
It was more of a it's kind of now or never sort of thing. It was very like a do or die thing. So
Yeah.
I from that point I sort of wanted to change and actually become a different person. I remember John from the band. We're going to talk about Portugal the Man later, everyone. Apologies for this, but he talks about being born again at 7. Being reborn
Mm.
again at a younger age because he just he thought the world was just kind and there was no evil, and then he realized that no, it's not like that. There are hardships in life,
Mhm.
and life isn't
Mhm.
fair. And at that point, it
Yeah.
was like I need to do something because I was at the bottom of a well, not actually, but like
Yeah.
literally, like there was no
Yeah. Yeah.
life was not getting better. So I any 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 opportunity to try and go back to before that time in a moment
Yeah.
that wasn't like bad for my health or mentally bad for me or a bad repressing memory or something. So any I don't know if it's like reminiscing about something I do as a kid, like just something like day trips somewhere you'd go as a kid, just thinking like that. But no, I'm unfortunately I'm pretty much an adult and a pretty boring one at that, unfortunately. So I don't know. I don't do a lot that makes me feel like a kid anymore.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'd have to think. I'd have to get back to you on that. I really would. I know that's
Yeah,
not a great
absolutely.
answer, but like something like that. Yeah. But that's those down the hill. I mean, I bet they were really good for like just recovering as well. Just when you're on the bike,
Yeah,
just going
absolutely.
downhill.
Just my legs were feeling like jello after, like climbing up the top of those. And so there's just such so much joy going down those and yeah, wonderful feeling. Yeah. I mean the best feeling there is on a bike, I think.
Well, the next best feeling would be outrunning a tornado. How was that?
Oh man. Yeah, that was a crazy day. The funny thing is when I'm on a bike tour, I really love when the weather gets extreme. And I was out there in Kansas one day and I was on this small country road. And the thing with Kansas is, man, that weather can change quickly. And in the summertime, there's massive thunderstorms. And I turned behind me. When like a really big storm is coming, you can feel it in the air, the energy.
Mm.
It seems like all of the energy is like shifting into the storm, like that's where it's going, and everything felt super calm all of a sudden. And so I turn around and I see this massive dark cloud behind me, and I thought, "Oh man, that thing looks pretty big. I better start riding." And so I rode for maybe 20 minutes, and I stopped in this gas station really quick to rest. Then I heard the tornado sirens going off, and I thought, "Oh man, like I gotta go." So I get back on the bike and I start riding, and I turn around, and the storm was just so huge, and it was actually a huge adrenaline rush for me because I was trying to outrun it, and apparently a tornado did end up touching down in one of the towns behind me, but thankfully it didn't cause any damage. It just stopped in a field, but that was a huge adrenaline rush. And then eventually, when I did set up my camp that night, I set it up under this like picnic area. And man, when that thunderstorm rolled in, I had never heard anything like that as far as thunder that was like shaking the ground. Like it was unbelievable, but also pretty cool, to see like the awesome power of nature.
Yeah, you got some nice shots on that, and I didn't actually know it was like that far behind, like excuse me, like a town behind or something. So you did well. You did well to avoid that. Yes, as you mentioned earlier about the
Thank you.
trying to get back home and avoiding the mountains when they were too snowy, even though you couldn't. So, I don't know.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
There's a sentence in there somewhere. Um, Tell us about the desert. The desert, riding through the desert. Probably the
Oh
toughest part
man.
that you had to do was riding without water for 35 miles, which, I mean, how? How did you manage that? I mean,
Yeah.
35 miles without
Yeah.
water, you must have just been on just barely anything. There must have been, your body must have been almost shutting down at that point. Like,
Yeah,
how did you
yeah.
survive?
That was a scary moment for sure, and especially because it was like the first week of riding for me, and I was crossing an area in Nevada called they call it the loneliest road in America, because like over the stretch of 400 miles, there's only like four towns, right? And on my last day, I took this detour, and I knew it was gonna be a super isolated road. It was 84 miles, three mountain passes, and no services, right? So what I
Oh,
was concerned
fun.
about the most was yeah, pretty intense, man. And the fact that there was no shade, that was my biggest concern. That I couldn't get out of the sun, right? And I just went through my water too fast, and I ran out. And the thing that made it way more challenging is I was facing this headwind, so all the wind was blowing into in the direction I was riding in, or it was blowing in my face, you know? So like it really slowed my pace down. So, and then where I started getting concerned was because I was getting so dehydrated, my nose started bleeding. And I figured, oh man, like now I'm losing a lot of like electrolytes, and like that's gonna make me even more dehydrated. And well, you know, what didn't make it any better was as I was riding along the road, there was just like the carcasses of like dead animals who like met their demise in the desert, you know, like,
Oh
and I'm like,
shit.
I'm watching that, yeah, you know, like the road was littered with like dead animals, cows
If
and stuff, and so I thought, oh man, I hope this isn't foreshadowing of what's gonna
that's
happen
a
to me, you
warning.
know?
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah,
Wow. I
exactly, yeah,
blimey. That
but
was probably
thankfully I was,
that was tough. That was
yeah,
tough to. Yeah, I was watching that thinking, man, like, obviously we know you survived because you made the documentary, but I'm like, he's not looking too good here. He's in direct sunlight for 35 miles. Should have taken more than four bottles of water. Maybe the fifth one.
yeah, we know it's interesting. I actually that time I think I had six because I had regular water bottles, and I bought two like in the grocery store of whatever town I was in that morning. I just went through it so fast. I mean, because it was I did that was June at this point, so it was hot in the desert, you know, and so I just went through it. And the funny thing is I'm from an area of California that's it's close to San Francisco, so it's actually very mild weather. So I'm not used to riding in like extreme heat like that. So it definitely like was a shock to my system.
Yeah, it would have been a shock to anyone's system. I mean, crazy. Absolutely. Um, about 30 minutes into the documentary, a woman kind of signals you from her car to kind of warn you of like the dangerous area. And we kind of lightly touched about
Yeah,
this earlier when you mentioned the East
yeah,
St. Louis area as well.
yeah.
You were like more defensive than earlier as well. Did you tell us? Did you have any conflicts along your documentary, along like the adventure you went on? Because like earlier on, when you were talking to Gene and you were talking to Mister Two Energy Bars, and you were pretty friendly with everyone, but there was a certain point where you were a little bit more like on edge. Like, had you? Was this
Yeah.
off? Was this? I can't remember the woman's name. I don't think you actually got it during the documentary, but I'm guessing this was probably just after the Harold situation, or maybe around the same
Oh, it was
time.
right before actually. Right
Oh, it
before.
was right
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, did you have
Yeah.
any? Did you have any conflicts apart from the situation in the lorry car park, which we'll talk about?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a time when I was in Missouri and I was sleeping or I set up my tent. It was like in this park and I thought it was hidden, you know, and these like four dudes walked up to me and they were saying like, you know, where are you from, man? You know, this is a gang neighborhood, you know, like what are you doing here, etc. I remember as they were talking to me thinking like, oh man, like I'm about to get jumped, so get ready, you know? And they warned me, like they said, you shouldn't be here, you know. And then like as soon as they left, I just got the hell out of there quickly, you know, because I thought for sure I was something bad was gonna happen to me. And then there was just you know, when I was in Idaho in this diner in this really like it was a very rural area where there was like the population was like 50 people in the mountains, and just like there were these just ignorant people who were just like using really racist language,
Mm.
and so like I confronted them about it, and like, you know, it was weird after that happened. Like one of the guys ended up like kind of following me out of the diner, and like he was following me with this truck, and I remember being like really concerned because this part of Idaho, man, like it was super rural out there, and like a lot of crazy things can happen out there, you know, like, and no one's gonna know. And it was interesting because later that day this guy pulled over and he said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, I'm heading to the next town." And again, this is in that rural area of Idaho, and in the mountains, and he said, "Where are you from?" So I'm from California, and he said, "Oh man," he's like, "You shouldn't admit that to people around here." And I was like, "Okay." And then
Oh shit.
he looked at me and he said, "Yeah," he said, "We're all carrying guns around here. You know that, right?" And then I just kind of was like, "Okay." And then he just stared at me and then just like slowly drove off. And that was another one of those situations where I thought like, "Oh shoot, man!" Like, definitely was freaked out from it and just trying to get out of there as quick as possible.
First of all, fuck that guy. Like, you're on a bike, he's
Seriously.
in like a lorry or something, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we carry shotguns, we carry weapons around here, fella. Oh, better not say you're from
Yeah.
California." That sort of thing. That was my American impression,
Yeah.
and
Oh, that's
it's
pretty
just
good.
that's just fucking. I don't know, like we kind of in the UK, we kind of hate people from other towns, and we like people might get into fist fights, and unfortunately, sometimes knives are involved as well, which is just heinous. It's just disgusting, but
Yeah. Yeah.
sadly
Yeah.
lives are lost. But never to be like, oh, you're from a town. I don't know where Idaho is without looking at a map, but it's fucking 300 miles from California. Why do they give a fuck? Why do they? Why do they care
Yeah.
where you're
Yeah.
like? Oh, that's just insane, man. I'm sorry you had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I I did wonder if I was doing something like that, I would make sure I have someone maybe like every quarter. So like someone like 25% of the way, 50% of the way, 75% of the way, and 100% of the way. Like you must have known someone in New York that would have like gotten you a plane ticket or whatever to fly back originally as well.
Yeah. So I was super privileged and fortunate to be able to do this because I mean, there's a lot of people who don't have a choice; they just live on the street, and I was so fortunate to be able to like have this opportunity to where I could have stopped at any time that I wanted to, and I always think it's super important to acknowledge that because there's so many people who have such a more challenging life, and kind of touching on what we were saying about, the person in Idaho, man. I think that in my opinion, certain when you're not exposed, when you live in an area and you're not exposed to people who are different than you, I think that creates a lot of fear, and like lack of understanding equals fear. And I think that this guy,
Mm,
because he was in such an isolated area, he saw somebody who was different that he didn't recognize, and he automatically got really scared, you know and
yeah.
was like, "Who is this guy? What is he doing in my neighborhood, etc." And that's what I think is so beautiful about diversity, and like the idea of you meet a lot of people from different cultures and different beliefs and understandings, and then you have a better understanding of each other, and then there's less fear amongst each other.
Well said. Not really sure what more to say about that. To be honest, that was I can only say yeah. Apologies for dealing with that. Yeah, it's Was there any point during the adventure on the way there where you thought, nah, fuck this, I'm going home?
No, there wasn't. No, but
You were committed the whole
yeah,
time to going there and then back. Okay.
yeah, so like this is one of the very few things in my life, or probably the only thing where as soon as the idea came to me, I was like absolutely sure like I wanted to do it, and I was like it was like it meant everything to me. And I mean, it doesn't mean that there were absolutely hard times, especially towards the end when my body started breaking down, like I will say the closest I came to quitting was it was about 6 weeks before I got home. I think I was like 800 miles. At this point, I was riding so slow because my body was feeling so beat up, and lifestyle I was living because I was trying to find like a safe place to sleep, get enough food for the day, and just trying to find a place to bathe. That was a huge part of it. And so like those stresses of the lifestyle were really starting to wear on me. And I remember my body felt so beat up, and I remember calling the physical therapist that I worked with before I left on this trip. She helped me get in shape for it, and I remember saying, "Hey, I don't know if I can keep going. Like my body is just too beat up." And the interesting thing was I think it was the next day I met this homeless man who like just his act of kindness like totally changed my life. And the interesting thing was I wasn't even looking for food or money that day, like I had that. But he sensed the energy I was putting out there. He was able to recognize it, and he asked if I was okay, and then he went and used his food stamps to buy me a bag of groceries, and he gave me a hug. And like his name was Gary, and he totally changed my life, and like honestly, like he was somebody who after that I felt like rejuvenated and refreshed and was like, okay, I want to keep going. and it was such a beautiful moment to experience with him, and the fact that he was living on the streets and he was still like willing to give was just really a really beautiful moment to experience.
Was this the chap who was on the street corner? Not to make it sound like he was
Yeah.
like a
Yep.
lady of the night or anything, but yeah, that was the part in the
Yeah.
documentary
Yeah.
where he ran. Yeah, you had the camera behind you, and then he was like across the other side of the road, and he was coming towards you. Yeah, yeah, I remember that because that was as you were coming back. Yeah, that's right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And it's just the timing of that was really interesting because
mm,
again, like, I mean, I was feeling like that was when the thoughts of quitting started really coming to my mind because but like he definitely changed my perspective on some things and gave me the motivation to keep going, man.
absolutely. I've got three more like base documentary questions.
Oh,
Towards the latter parts, your beard started to grow, and people stopped
yeah.
interacting with you as much. Like you mentioned this earlier as well, but like, what was that like? Because obviously, I'm a man of facial hair. I'd have to take some sort of razor or something with me just to maintain what I had growing or whatever. You never got to shave until you went to the gentleman in the mountains, the elderly man who he had like the bike shelter as well. I'm forgetting his name. I
Yeah.
apologize. I think that's when
Larry.
Larry. That was that. Yeah, he had a lot of people who like stopped by essentially, and he was incredibly kind as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beard situation. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm glad you brought it up. So basically, when I first left, I was more clean cut. I hardly had any hair on my face, and I was also feeling good, feeling physically and mentally strong. And so I was very approachable at that point, right? But after 7 months of being on the road, I purposely grew a beard because I wanted to see how it would affect the way that people treated me, right? And what happened was is it definitely I was getting harassed a lot more. Just people, like driving by, calling me a bum, things like that, throwing things. That stuff wasn't happening when I was more clean cut. I was also getting kicked out of like parking lots where I was holding my sign. That was happening way more often once I had the beard. And it brings up the idea of like, well, okay, so I was being treated differently because of the way that I looked, right? So what would have happened if I would have just been a black man doing this the entire time? Because like I could have shaved my beard and like I would have instantly been treated differently. But like if my skin color was different, then there's no control over that. Like it again revealed like the privileges that I had going into this trip. It also showed just how we judge people, we judge, and it was very eye-opening to witness that, because I've been fortunate throughout my life, so I hadn't been treated poorly because of the way that I looked. But that was one moment when the way that I looked did judge that. And again, I can't bring this up without mentioning the fact that we are treated differently based on our skin color or our physical appearance. And this was very very eye opening to me. And yeah, I think and it's super important topic to bring up because this whole experience would have been so much different for me if I wasn't like a white guy who was clean cut doing this.
Yeah, I find it very telling, especially when there is. I think you show one instance of someone again in a truck throwing. I think he threw something, or like, he did say "bum" at you or whatever, and you were like, "Man, that's really killed my mood." In the documentary, you were like, "Man, that's really." I was like level-headed or words to that effect, and that sort of broke your spirit. You're like, "Yeah, come on, man." Like being.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting, Mark. Like basically because I mean, there was things being yelled. I mean, in the beginning there every once in a while people were, yelling things, but it wasn't happening as often. But after 7 months of being yelled at and like harassed, like eventually, even though I knew like I could go home at any point and go back to my normal life, like again, like privilege, but like 7 months of it didn't matter. Like it still bothered me, and I didn't think those things would bother me. But after 7 months, like it definitely does. And I can't imagine for somebody who's just living that lifestyle every day, like how difficult it would be when they're just trying to get enough food for the day, and people are just going out of their way to like harass somebody. Like it's so wrong, on so many levels. And again, like a very eye opening experience to go through that.
Hmm. Another eye-opening experience was the warehouse tent situation.
Oh
Did you ever
man.
think you were ever going to die during this. I mean, that was probably the moment. You very good documentarian. You got your camera out at the perfect time. So fair play to you for that, because that could have been pear shaped so quickly. You were staying at someone else's house. Tell us what happened about that scenario.
Yeah,
You'll know it in the
yeah,
documentary when you obviously you see it. It's pretty divine.
yeah. So, I was in Paterson, New Jersey, right? I had just left New York City, and Paterson, New Jersey, there was this woman who approached me when I was holding my sign in front of a grocery store, and she was from Colombia, and she was so kind, and she said, "Hey, I'm concerned about you, and like, do you need a place to stay?" And so I thought, "Oh my God, what a beautiful like interaction this is, and I'm so grateful." So definitely. And she ended up sharing stories with me about growing up in extreme poverty in Colombia, and she was so kind and cooked me a meal, and you know, she had a spare bedroom for me to sleep in. And so I went to sleep, and then at midnight, like, her daughter and her boyfriend come home, and the boyfriend instantly was just like super suspicious of me and didn't trust me. You know, the woman who welcomed me into her house, she was telling him, "No, it's fine, he's okay, he's with me, he's like, he's safe." But this guy didn't trust me, right? So he got really close to my face, and he threatened like physical violence if I didn't leave. And I said, "Okay, fine, like, I'll leave," you know. And so he threw all my stuff out into the street, and this was in a gang neighborhood in Paterson, New Jersey, right? So it was midnight, and I was riding through this gang neighborhood, and with all of my gear on my bike, and obviously like standing out, like, I, you know, like, I'm not from there, with all my bike stuff. And um so my thought was, okay, like, I just need to get like off the street, like literally like this second. Like, I didn't want to ride another second because it was just super dangerous. Like, in other situations, I would have thought just ride out to the countryside or just the next town, a smaller town, and find a place to stay. But I just felt super scared, you know. And so I found this warehouse, and I thought, okay, I guess I'll just like set up my tent behind this warehouse. And I didn't feel good about it, but I just felt like, well, at least it's safer than like being out like in a gang neighborhood. And I went to sleep, and then I woke up at 3 a.m. and man, I heard this truck pulling up to my tent, and man, I heard them. You know, the truck started revving its engine and driving towards my tent, and I remember in that moment thinking like, I'm going to die. Like, I thought, and I didn't know why. Like, I didn't know why I was about to get run over, but I just thought like, that's just happening. Like, I'm getting run over, and that's it. And then the you know, the truck stopped, and I heard the person's door open and then close, and then the guy yells like, "Get the fuck out," or something like that, right? And when I heard that, then my I thought, okay, I'm not getting run over, but like, I'm gonna get robbed and maybe murdered. And I'll never forget like the terror that I felt, like being in my tent, because I couldn't see what was happening. And even when I unzipped the tent, all I saw was headlights, right? And I was being blinded by those headlights. And so I didn't know if the person was holding a gun, like, you know, and like aiming it at me or what. But you know, that experience was so impactful for me, because it really made me think about, you know, for people who live on the streets, like, that could be something that happens fairly often. Like, people come up to their tent and they don't know what's going on, and that shit is traumatizing, man. And thankfully I wasn't harmed during that, but like, the idea that stuck with me the rest of the bike ride. The next 3 months I was on the road, like, I was taking like extra precautions, when I was sleeping in different places, because I was terrified that something like that would happen again.
First of all, I mean, just crazy, absolutely crazy that that happened to you. And the way you're watching it as
Yeah.
well. When I was watching it, I was like, shit. I mean, because to be honest, let's be honest. If you couldn't see, he was probably holding a gun as well, as you mentioned. You couldn't see.
Yeah,
You didn't know. You
probably.
could maybe like put your
Yeah.
arm out and say, "Look, I'm unarmed." Yada yada. This sort of thing. Don't shoot. I think you did say, "Don't shoot" in the documentary as well. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
especially, yeah, because it was midnight when you got kicked out, probably a little after that, so it's dark as well. You can't exactly see where you're going brilliantly in a place you've probably never been
Yeah.
before, and you're like, oh, well, I've got to go find somewhere I
Yeah.
can be secure, and there's just nowhere. And but this is the
Yeah, there was nowhere to go.
this I know
There
you
was
set
nowhere to
yourself
go,
this
man.
challenge, but this was like a level harder than you were probably expecting. Like, oh shit, what do I do here? Like, I am, between a rock and a hard place essentially. And so
Yeah.
I found it like
Yeah.
that was the most like stressed I think that you looked,
Mhm.
and well,
Yeah, yeah, that was the
thankfully
most
nothing worse
traumatizing
happened.
moment. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I don't really know what to say. I mean, you'll get to the moment in the documentary, but a little bit of backstory because you didn't actually show. Because another Central American woman, I'm really bad with the nationalities. That
Yep.
she invited you into your house and you stayed there. I think you stayed in
Yeah.
the garden or something. So this was a different person to this other one.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, Mark, because like this experience, it was a little bit of everything. Like there was moments of like sadness, like there's moments of terror, but then there was also moments of like just beautiful kindness and compassion. So it wasn't just like one particular thing, you know. And with this woman, her name was Fabiola, and she was from Nicaragua, and I was riding my bike through Kansas City, Missouri, and she flagged me down and she was like, "Where are you coming from? Where are you going?" You know, she was so excited. And I said, "Yeah, I'm like, I started near San Francisco. I'm going to New York." And she was like, "Do you need a place to stay?" And I thought, wow, like that's super kind. And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so she welcomed me into her house, you know, and I had she, you know, her family, they cooked a nice meal and we shared some nice Nicaraguan food. And after the meal, you know, I sat there with her at the dinner table and I said, "You know, what made you want to just pull over and start talking to me, you know?" And she said, "You know, I saw you and it made me think about my husband." She said, "My husband's dream was to bike across the country, right? But he got cancer at like, I think he was 40 and he's like, and he died at 40." And she said, when I saw you, I, I wanted to celebrate his spirit. So I wanted to, you know, give you a place to stay and in a way to honor my late husband." And it was moments like those where I thought, man, like this is, I didn't think something like this would happen when I left on this journey, you know, and it was such a beautiful moment to connect with somebody like that. And the really cool moment thing about it was she grew up in Nicaragua where obviously they speak a different language, you know, it's a different culture. Like there's so many, her and I had a lot of different like experiences growing up, but what we bonded over was we bonded over the fact that we both lost loved ones to cancer, right? And she shared stories with me about losing her husband, you know, from cancer, and I shared stories with her about losing my dad, right? And then all of a sudden I thought, you know, we actually don't seem like we're that different, you know. And that was a nice lesson for me to learn is even though someone grows up in those different circumstances, that we all share like a lot of the same human experiences, right? And that was just such a beautiful moment to share with Fabiola.
It's another character along the story that I think we should highlight as well because, again, you mentioned the other woman from not America, and then you mentioned Fabiola from Nicaragua. These are people who
Mhm.
are there. I don't want to say the word immigrant, but they've come to the country, you know, and they're
Yep.
looking to help people as well. You know, I know there were
Yeah.
some home national, you know, some people from the US as well, but it kind of sounds like people who, especially the homeless people on hard times, or people who have had, you know, not the easiest ride in life, are always like, I understand your pain, I know where you're coming from, and
Yeah.
you know, as your
Yeah.
documentary's called, I'll say it again, we're all in this together. There we go. So, very fitting. But yeah,
Yeah.
I
Appreciate that.
no, no. So, last kind of main documentary question: you reached New
Yeah.
York, you made it to the destination. Congratulations! But you said you felt incomplete. Now, I
Yeah.
always say sometimes I think the journey is greater than the destination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take that however you may see. You felt incomplete. Tell us why.
Yeah, you know what? So I agree with you. The journey, yeah, what you just said about the journey and the destination, absolutely. What I think, you know, a lot of this whole documentary, it was based on just gut feeling and intuition. Like, especially like when I left, there wasn't much of a plan. Like, I just left on my bike and was like, okay, we'll just see what happens, right? And so I was really trying to trust, listen to my gut the whole time, and my gut was saying it's not over, right? And so I just decided to keep, you know, I decided to ride back, and I didn't know why it felt incomplete until I got home, honestly. And what it was is I think I needed to go through those hardships because again, the second half of the trip on the way back home, that's when the whole experience got a lot more challenging because again of the dangers of places to sleep and then the way I was being treated, right? And so going through those times when I was receiving less help from people, I think that's what I needed to go through, because it kind of shined a light on the people who did end up helping me in those hard times. It made me realize how important our day-to-day interactions are with people, you know. And I didn't quite understand that on the way to New York City, but when I was receiving much less help, and especially when there was people like homeless people who were literally helping me towards the end, I mean, that was so eye-opening and life-changing to experience that. And I think that's what I needed to go through, because now after going through that, I realized again, every day that we have this like incredible opportunity to show up for somebody, right? And it's the second half of the trip taught me that. So that's, I think, what was missing.
You also met a lot of people on the second half, not the second half, but on the way back as well, that kind of, I don't know, they stood out a little bit more as well. Like you mentioned about the
Yeah,
gentleman
I
who let you
agree.
stay at
You're
your
right.
house and other things. So maybe you thought, I just hadn't, maybe not had your fill, but like I hadn't quite got out of this what you anticipated. Obviously, you'd gained.
Yeah.
It's tremendously impressive to do what you had done, and then you thought, no, it's not enough. I need to I need to keep making this harder for myself and go find that. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the right phrase is, but yeah, you take it away. Sorry.
No, I agree with you, Mark. Yeah, I think you're right. It did feel like there was, I needed to meet, there was more people that I think I needed to meet to understand, have a better understanding of humanity and connection, etc. And those people, that second half, like, yeah, really showed me that.
Absolutely. And with the closing shots of the documentary, Sleep Forever starts
Yeah.
playing, which is very
Oh yeah.
incredibly fitting. I mean, you plan that out obviously from the beginning. I mean, you kind of have to really. It's the closer.
Yeah.
We've talked about closing songs on here as well, but
Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
incredibly fitting. During the documentary, if you're a keen listener of Portugal the Man, you'll notice there were 6 songs played throughout the whole thing. Now, could you tell us which ones they were exactly? I'm putting you on the spot.
For sure, man. Yeah. So the film opens with Smile to set the tone, right? And then as I'm leaving, I chose to use People Say, and specifically, yeah, I feel like there's a message there. And then, yeah, I used So American when crossing the desert. And then I used Senseless. And the reason I used Senseless was because I was getting closer to New York City and the summer was ending. And so I thought, well, the lyrics for that song is perfect, you know? So that's very fitting for Senseless for the chorus. And then I used And I when I was crossing some mountain passes in the Rockies, just because that song is just so epic and just has such a build to it. You know, and I thought, well, if I want, because I thought that part of the movie, it's like that's peak as far as just like adventure and like cinematography, etc. So I wanted to have a really powerful song for that. And so I used And I. And then to end it, I wanted to use Sleep Forever because I mean, it's pretty, there's not much to say. We all know how beautiful of a song Sleep Forever is, and I thought that's how I want to close this, you know. So those are the 6 songs that I use.
Yeah, that was absolutely yeah. I thought I'd check up on yeah. So yeah, Smile to open it. 2 minutes 56. You had people say 10 minutes in, so American. 45 minutes was senseless. You wanted to let the documentary speak for itself, and then at 53 minutes and dying to close it out, Sleep Forever. So good picks. Kind of, uh, sadly retro picks now as well, almost for Portugal the Man
Yeah,
stuff.
crazy.
Yeah, how did you what was kind of the did you contact John or anyone from the band and be like, hey, can I use them or would this be cool or what was the arrangement there? How did you get this to come about?
Oh man, I'm so stoked to talk about this, man, because like I haven't had a chance to talk about anybody who's like other Portugal the Man fans about this. So basically I went to a back a couple of years ago, I went to a show in Santa Cruz, California, and I got there early because I wanted to meet the band, you know, and I saw John and Chris Black actually. I first spoke to Chris Black and was talking to him, you know, for a couple of minutes. And then after speaking with him, I saw John and I said, "Hey John, hey, what's up, man? I'm Daniel. I just want to share something with you." And I said, "Hey, I have this idea for this documentary, man." And I kind of shared the idea with him, and John was so cool, man. I mean, what I first stood out was like there was a couple people around, and when I said, "Hey, what's up, man? I wanted to share something," like he said, "Yeah," and he like gestured like, "Let's take a couple steps over here," and he like gave me the opportunity to speak. which I just appreciated so much because I can't imagine how, especially when they're on tour, how busy they are and just how many people want stuff from them, photos and, their time. But he gave me the time, to share this idea. And after I shared it with him, he's like, yeah, it sounds like a cool idea. He's like, just get in contact. He's like, send me an email, like when you get back and we'll talk. Right. And that's pretty much how it went, man. And he just so supportive. And I kept in contact with Rich, the manager, Rich Holtzman, who has been so great and supportive throughout this whole process. And I felt so grateful to be able to work with these guys, So that's kind of how it went down.
Oh, awesome! So you went straight to the to John then to get permission. That's awesome. While you're there, you might you seized your opportunity brilliantly. Did you manage to speak to Chris Black at all as well? I've had a few kind of
Yeah.
stories of people like saying, "Oh, Chris was there," or "Chris was there," but like not a lot of stories about like conversing with him.
Yeah. We talked for a couple minutes actually. I actually shared my story with Chris before I even mentioned it to John. And Chris was like, "Oh, that sounds dope, man." He was saying, he was joking around. He's like, "Maybe I can come with you on a tandem bike," which I thought was hilarious. Like he wanted to ride with me. But he was so warm and kind. And again, it was like, it's funny talking with him because it was so easy. It was like we already knew each other. And he was such a warm person. And so it was really cool to have that opportunity to speak with him. And I'm super grateful. And I mean, I hear these stories, from different, obviously, I hear it from John in interviews, etc. But I also hear it from people on the message boards, on the Reddit message board and Discord, and people talk about their experiences with him, and it all makes sense. And I feel fortunate to have had that interaction with him.
Wow, that's cool. I don't think I've actually heard like a apart from someone from the band, like a direct quotation from Chris, because he does look
Yeah,
like that kind of kind, like gentle giant, some would say. But he also looks like
totally,
he
totally.
would he'd be on your side and he'd like motivate you and give you a little kick up the backside if you need it. And I
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. And
because
and sometimes you come in go ahead.
I was gonna say I'll never have the opportunity to meet him, unfortunately, because I've
Yeah.
not been fortunate
Yep.
enough to be at a show where he was at, or a show in Portugal.
Yeah.
Hopefully that changes, but it's a bit of a kick in the teeth that I'll never get to meet him
Yep.
because I'm sure we would have had
Yeah.
some rapport. Hopefully, but yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because everybody else did. It sounds like.
yeah. Sorry, you were saying about you were talking to him a little bit more. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no problem. So basically with Chris, sometimes you come in contact with people who just like you just want to like hug them. Like that's how I would describe Chris. He was just like that kind of figure to where like you want to share a hug with him or like put your arm around him. Like he was that type of guy. Like he had that kind of energy. That's the way that I would describe my interaction with him.
That's lovely. That's brilliant. Um,
Mhm.
you mentioned Santa Fe. This was probably like mid 2000s. When did you start? When did you discover the band? What is your kind of origin story with them? Because you've got a sense of
Yeah.
colours song, so you must have been around for a little bit before. Tell us how it
Yes.
began.
Uh-huh. So I've been traveling throughout like the last 20 years of my life pretty much. Almost every summer I'm trying to find like different ways to travel, etc. And a lot of the times I'm out in Europe, like I was, when I first started, I was backpacking around Europe, and staying in hostels, etc., and just trying to find like little like jobs here and there so I could kind of work for travel. And it was 2010, and I was on YouTube, and I was looking up just other people's experiences, like backpacking around Europe. I like watching those little videos, and I came across this video, and it was like a 5-minute video of these people summing up their tour backpacking around Europe, and the song "The Home" from the Satanic Satanist was playing in the background, and I remember thinking like, "Damn, I love this song. Like, who is this? Like, I've never heard this, this song or this." And so yeah, I looked it up and I thought, okay, I'll just download this album, the Satanic Satanist. And I've never had anything like this before, to where when I downloaded that album and I listened to it, I felt like I knew I crossed into something new that I'd never experienced before. And it was like when people say it spoke to my soul, like that's how I felt with this band. I was like, oh my God, like I found my band. You know what I mean? And like, and that was the funny thing is I was just musically at first, right? I just loved the music, and I didn't even really pay attention to the lyrics at that point. And then a couple months later, I started, I started going through their catalog and actually listening to the lyrics of what John was saying. It was like, oh my gosh, like this is way deeper of a message than just like fun music to listen to. So instantly, I just got like so connected to the music they're putting out there, and then the social issues that they were involved in. It was like, yeah, this is who I want to, be putting in my earbuds, and like because it totally influenced my way of thinking about the world, and like and their music has opened up my eyes to so many things, like as far as social activism and different, and my outlook on a lot of things in the world. So I felt so stoked to find them.
Wow, that's starting with the home. I mean, that's a good place to start. I mean, yeah, hey, why not 2010? Wow, you are 14 years deep. Bit of an OG now, I suppose. At this point, you're more, longer serving than I am. I
Yeah, well, it's funny, man. That guitar solo in the home, like, come
mm.
on, does it get any better than that? Damn.
uh, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Um, so you started off with the home, and then you've been. How many times have you been to see them live? You mentioned at least once in Santa Fe. Have you been multiple times, or tell us
Yeah,
about
I
your
think I've seen
experiences?
them 6 times. My one of my favorite ones was actually in 2017. I saw them in Amsterdam. I
Oh,
was actually working on a farm in Switzerland for the summer,
hmm.
and in this little village out there in the mountains, and like I saw that they were going to be playing in Amsterdam, so I took a plane to Amsterdam. I spent the weekend there, and I saw them in this place called the Paradiso, which is it's this old church that was converted into a concert hall, and it was so dope, man. It was so cool to see them in that venue. And that was probably one of my favorite shows that I ever saw them in.
Wow. I mean, I, I've I've been to the Netherlands briefly, anyway.
Huh?
So
Mhm.
yeah, it's right. I mean, everywhere's a hop, skip, and a jump for us over here in Europe, so
Yeah, yeah,
it's
for
not too
sure.
difficult. Yeah. No, that sounds like the kind of place they play at as well. I know John likes his indoor venues as well, so that kind of ticks a lot of the boxes.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty cool though. Yeah, working in Switzerland, was that you were doing some travel and then you were using that to like earn some money to keep traveling, sort of thing?
Exactly. Yeah, I met this family in this village, and I just asked them like if they needed help for the summer, and yeah, I ended up staying. Like we basically, it's this small village of 100 people out there in the mountains, and we spend the summers making hay all summer because the cows are up in the Alps making cheese, and so our goal for the summer is we need to stock the barn with as much hay as we can. So that's kind of what we do for the summer, and super special, man, because the family, it's they don't speak any English, so it's very authentic, like true Switzerland. And so I speak some Swiss German enough to have basic conversations, but so cool to be out there in the mountains. It's funny, I actually brought when I went, I brought John a little cube of some goat cheese from their farm, and I said, hey man, I want to give this to you, this is from the farm I'm working at.
Gifting him some cheese. Wow, that has got to be a. I've not heard anyone give anyone that sort of thing. I mean, you made it with your own two hands, so fair play to you. No, that sounds
Yeah.
pretty cool. Shame they weren't Italian. You could have maybe like leaned into your heritage a little bit and be like, oh, I can,
Exactly.
you know, buongiorno.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Oh,
exactly.
nice.
Nice. Nice.
So you've seen them. Well, don't ask me for any more. All right, one word, pizza as well. Okay. Um, so 6 shows. You're pretty okay. So pretty hardcore then. What do you think of Chris Black? Changed My Life. Then released a little
Oh
over like
man,
9 months ago now.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
Dude, I love this album so much, like so much. And what it is, it just to me, I mean, there's so many aspects about it, but it just sounds so personal from John, and hearing about some of the struggles he's been going through, and especially after learning about like with Frances, and her diagnosis, and just like it sounds it's really special when what they're you have an idea of what he's singing about, because of some of the struggles that he's been talking about the last couple years. And bro, I can't even like it's hard to put into words, like having the heavy games like showing up numerous times, and the fact that it's a concept album, and like just this it flows so well, it's such a tight album. Yeah, absolutely love it. Like, absolutely love everything about it. And I think that because it'd been so many years since Woodstock had dropped, like there was some pressure. You know, it's like, will they be able to put something
Mm.
out? Is it going to be good again? And like, there's a lot of hype. But dude, like, I think it totally lived up to the hype that there was about it, and I I was just so happy about it, so happy. And the fact that they called it Chris Brain Black changed my life, like that alone, that's such a unique title. But it's very straightforward. It's saying like, this person had a huge role in my life, and it's celebrating him. Like I fucking love that, man.
As you said it, yeah, the 6 years was worth the wait. I mean, it could have very easily been a soft landing or something like that, or maybe the fans didn't. But the kind of the common consensus is that people were very happy to delighted with this. So I think they
Yeah.
knocked it out of the park. And then maybe I don't know what the wider circles has been, but whenever John's done like a podcast or an interview, people are like, "Oh, I've been listening to this and that, and it's on my playlist and this and that." And I think there was a little bit more, there was less of that during Woodstock, maybe because Feel It Still was such a
Yeah.
kind of a vacuum for so much attention. It was like, oh, this song.
Yeah.
There is a whole album there as well, which looking back at it now, Woodstock and Chris Black. I mean, Chris Black is just so much better. I apologise to the Woodstock fans out there, but it is just such growth and detail, and I don't know. It feels like they've evolved with this one. Like you can see the 6 year. Obviously, they're not spent every second of every day working on a 6 year album, but there's been time and love and care put into it, and you can definitely tell. Um, what's your favourite song off the album? I'm curious. I'm starting to ask people what theirs are because I've heard you know everything from Dummy to Doubt to Grim Generation to Summer of Love to
Yeah.
Anxiety Clarity and everything in between. But where do you stand?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I'd say so my favorite song has to be Doubt. Like that song, that is one of those Portugal the Man songs that every time I listen to it, it hits me and I feel something. And honestly, I cry almost every time I listen to it. It's one of those
Mm.
songs, right? And I just think about what John and Zoe and their family have been going through the last couple years, and so that song hits me. And I remember it's like I love those kind of ballads that they do, like censored colored style, like I love that when John taps into that. So I'd say that's my favorite song off the album, but I am kind of funny when it comes to certain songs. Like, since it's my favorite, I don't listen to it too often because I don't want to like spoil it. So the song that I
Oh,
listen to the most off that album is Champ. I mean,
oh,
that song,
okay.
dude, I just love everything about that song. And dude, like the way that John sings in that and the way that he flows is so dope, dude. It's
Mm.
so sick. So
That's.
sick. And the fact, yeah,
I was gonna say no.
yeah,
It's awesome
like
to hear that because I've heard so many different answers, and personally, Champ is probably I'm not gonna say it's my favorite off the album. It's definitely
mhm,
I
mhm.
don't think I have a least favorite. I don't think it's that kind of thing. It's not like I don't really like Keep On from Woodstock. I hate to keep dogpiling on Keep On, but I do on this podcast, and I'm sorry, but
Mhm.
it's just not my thing. And with Champ, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a little softer on this one, but it's still
Mhm.
everything's. I mean, the end, like 30 seconds, like the solo bit, that's
Right?
pretty cool. Yeah, that's they just. I know they do that in the live sets, but I'm glad that they've kind of incorporated that within the main
Yes.
album for people to enjoy.
Yeah, totally. And that's again like what set this album is. I hadn't heard that on any other albums, them doing that. And what was cool about this, it seems like John just did whatever the fuck he wanted to. Like this seems to me,
Yeah.
this seems like this is the most artistic album that they've put out, in my opinion. In my opinion, especially dude, like having Paul Williams at the end of Anxiety Clarity, just giving that like spoken word. Like I've never heard an album that does something like that. Like that's so unique and different. Like just true work of art.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting Paul Williams on as well. That's a big fish. That's not like these
Yeah.
small.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big fish in the world of music, and to get someone to get that pull, yeah, that is powerful. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, Chris Blank. I'm glad you liked it. I've not met or talked to anyone who's like very cold on it, which is good. maybe in a few years' time, a few people will be like, I'm listening to it for the 800th time. I don't like it anymore or whatever. But at the moment, the
Yeah.
consensus is positive, high grades, much love. And hey,
Yeah.
more, I've speculated with a couple of people about will there be another album? Will there be more after this? And I hope so as well. But if this is because they are getting slightly older, they're not getting like retirement age older or anything, but with family issues and Francis, and we've had Zach's currently out. He's having some. He's taking some time for himself because of medical reasons.
Mhm.
Jason's out running his restaurant. Obviously, they do like 400 shows a year, and they don't actually breathe or speak to their family, so it's a good chance
Yeah.
to go spend time with your family. I mean, yeah, they're probably they're kind of shuffling in and out a little bit at the moment. The tour's slowing down for a little bit now, and then it picks back up again in the summer. So
Yeah.
lots going on with them in the US, in Australia, and Mexico this year. Hopefully the rest of the world. I'll take a Netherlands show
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything closer to home. Yeah. What do you think's next for them after Chris Black? Obviously, they're touring at the moment and doing a bunch of interviews and things and pieces.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
what's
one
next?
of the reason. Yeah, one of the reasons I love them is just like the way that John and Zoe have handled like Francis' diagnosis. It's just again with so much class and just like what honor. Like they look at it like, okay, now we have this opportunity to like spread awareness about this rare disease. And the fact that they're using their platform to do that now is just unbelievable. A huge part of the reason why I'm such a fan of theirs is just like their activism, man. And so I imagine that I would think that they're going to continue to use their platform to spread awareness about that. um I do personally. I think they're going to have, I don't think this is their last album. I think that there's yeah, I have hope that they'll continue putting out albums. I'm really happy to hear that. With again, I don't know what's going on with Zach, but like, dude, I have so much love for these guys. Like, and they've given me the world so much joy and so much music and social change. And I think it's great that if Zach needs some time for himself for whatever the reasons are, like take as much as he needs because he definitely deserves it. But I definitely think that this isn't. I don't think this is the last album that Portugal the Man puts together with this current group of band members.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think I especially after what we've learned, I think there's more room to there's still things they want to do, but I think this was a good box to tick. Not to say it like that, but there
You
were a
know,
lot of things they wanted to accomplish and a lot of things, and the timing of what happened to Francis. I mean, let's be honest, from
yeah,
like an optics point of view, saying 2 months before you've got a big album coming out that you know we're putting on a fundraiser. If you're
yep.
from the outside looking in, you could be like, "Oh, this is a cash grab," or like they're using
Mhm.
this for that, and they couldn't help it. That's the time that things happened, and they were very
Mhm.
noble and presentable, and those videos are just man, they're a gut punch. They're so hard to watch. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just can't imagine what they went through, and it does sound like things are a little better on the Francis case. I'm not a doctor. I'm not medically professionally trained, so I have no idea. But they have contact with another family with similar situation with their
Yeah.
child as well. So they've got something to lean on and someone to talk to at least. So they have an idea of what they're going through, and I hope all the best for them. I'd like to put more money towards it. It's just it's a tough time for everyone at the moment, and
Yep.
they've done pretty well on the donations. I mean, we're up to like 300,000, which first of all
Amazing.
is
Amazing.
pretty amazing. I mean, it'd be awesome to hit the goal one day, and one day we'll hit it. It'll probably take a little bit longer than they wanted to, but I think they've got a good chance of just keep plugging away. Doesn't hurt. Doesn't
Yeah.
they're getting there, and hopefully every cent, every penny, every dime, or whatever the currency. I don't know. It's all going towards a good cause, and then they've got the foundation as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah, and that makes me think about just wanting to give a shout out to just all the people on Portugal Man's Discord and also the subreddit. Like, dude, people are showing up big time. for this band, you know, and for John, Zoe, and Francis, and it's so beautiful to see. Like, there's so much love in this like community, this Portugal the Man community. It's so inspiring, and it's interesting because I think we all like the things you were just describing. You really nailed it, man. Like when we all heard about this diagnosis for Francis, like it hit us all hard. Like, and we all saw those videos, and it just shows like we have so much love for them because they've given us so much, you know. And it's really beautiful to see how
Mm.
concerned all the fans are, and we want to do what we can. And you're seeing different fundraisers and people selling their own like people selling and auctioning off their Portugal the Man stuff to raise money for Francis. It's so inspiring and just I'm so stoked to be a part of this community.
Yeah, and I think you coming on here and talking about your experience and your reason for wanting to do your cross country adventure on the bike and using the band as kind of like a backing thing, especially with the music as well. I think it's just we're all doing something. We're all trying to contribute in a little way, and I mean yours is
Yeah,
a much bigger way than a lot of people. I think you've done an incredible feat, and
thank
yeah,
you.
I yeah, we keep pushing towards the right direction. Hopefully, these shows are making money for them that they can put into
Yeah,
just keeping them afloat. Don't have to keep relying on the rice cooker or the hot dog
yeah,
roller reheater or whatever John
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
John likes. That's
yeah. I love hearing those stories from them.
that's crazy. What is some of your favorite albums? It's quite. I mean,
Yeah, to
I can
me,
guess.
yeah,
Sorry, go on.
yeah. No, thank you, man. It's fun talking about this with you. To me, my favorite album is In the Mountain in the Cloud, and the reason why is I just think that there's so much the variety of songs in that album. I think it sums up Portugal the Man's sound. Like I think because you get a little bit of everything, right? And I think like you have a song like a banger like All Your Light, right? And then you have something like Floating, which is I don't know. I think that it's got a little bit of everything in that album. If you were to ask me like what give me a sample of what their music is like, I think this gives you a good example, and like I love Evil Friends so much, but I also can hear Danger Mouse's influence, which isn't a bad thing, right? But I feel like if you want to hear Portugal Man's true sound, I don't even know if that's fair to say, but in my opinion, I think that In the Mountain in the Cloud is like that's the most Portugal the Man album out of any Portugal the Man album.
Oh no, fair enough. That's a pretty common consensus. I think In the Mountain and the Cloud, Evil Friends, and then there's going to be a whole nother generation of people that'll be saying, "Oh, I really like Chris Black. That's my favorite album." But I think those two definitely
Yeah.
stand out. Some people will say Churchmouth. Some will say Censored Colors. They're very notable, and all the other albums in between. I mean, I've had someone mention that they're a big fan of It's Complicated Being a Wizard and everything in between.
Hmm.
So it's so diverse. It's a great community, and especially what we kind of keep trucking along. Things are happening. The communities are really alive. Like if you look around other band communities, some of them are like really, really not alive, and there's no interaction. You're like, man, that's got to be a real
Yeah,
kick. Like
exactly.
that's your favorite band, and like no one really else. I wouldn't say the word care, but to the same extent, like there's always posts and threads, and the Discord's always going off, and people are chatting, and people are meeting up at shows and everything.
Yep,
It doesn't get much better than
exactly. Yeah,
that.
you're right, man. There's such a strong sense of community with the Portugal the Man, with the fans and also the band.
Absolutely. You want to
Well, I
ask
wanted
it
to
to
hear
me?
if you just answer it quickly, right, on the spot without thinking.
Oh,
If I
oh,
were to
okay.
say favorite Portugal the Man song, what would you say?
I'm really sorry. I've absolutely drawn a blank because I don't want to say purple, yellow, red, and blue, but it might have to be. I don't know. I think that's the one that kind of started it for me, so it's a bit of a
Yep.
cop out.
Yep.
I didn't want to say that. Yeah. It's probably purple, yellow, red, and blue. Um,
Yep.
it's so good. Yeah. The variations of the live versions as well, and the fact that
Oh yeah.
I kind of heard it on a video game, and then that kind of spawned.
Cool.
Well, actually, I heard Got It All first, so maybe I should say Got It All. But Purple, Yellow, and Blue,
Oh, nice,
something sticks
nice.
with that. Yeah, they were both part of game soundtracks, and Live in the Moment
FIFA.
later on as
Yeah.
well. Yep, they were both on there. Yep.
Is cool. Cool.
Yeah, so that's
Awesome.
kind of how I discovered it, and there's not really many people who discovered the band that way and have kind of tagged along for as long, or maybe they have and they're not very vocal in the community. But
Hmm.
that's kind of how I found my way. And I've heard John say, "Oh, there are the FIFA songs." And I'm like, "Oh, bless you, John. Definitely looking out for me." Yeah. Yeah. No, sorry for the hesitation, but yeah, purple, yellow, and blue. I'll say that
Yep.
as the
Yep.
answer. But yeah, I yeah, I think what they've done recently and with the album with the tour, it's a really good place to be in. I don't know. I'm pretty content as a fan, and I'm just hoping maybe we get some shows. Not in North America and South America. A bit closer to Europe. That'd be
Yeah.
nice. But I understand it from a family point of view that maybe they want to stay a little closer to home at the moment. But Zoe is from
Yeah.
England, so I am expecting a show. I'll just say that I'm
Yeah.
expecting a show. So
Yep.
maybe one day. Awesome. I think we're coming a little bit closer towards the end of the podcast. I think we've had a good chat about the documentary and kind of I had some questions that we went through, and then a little bit more Portugal.TheMan stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're not quite done yet. I've got one more thing I want to talk about the song game. I
Yeah.
think
Oh.
so. You said you listened to the podcast before at least once, so thank
Yeah.
you again for that. Honestly, it's great to hear. I'm not sure why people would listen to this, but thank you very much. I try and do. I'm just here to learn how to do a show and try and make it a little bit better each time. So thank you to everyone who does listen. And yeah, so the song game. So 10 questions, yes or no. Got to try and work out one song from their entire discography of Portugal.TheMan. How you feeling? I've got one selected at the ready.
I'm excited.
You
This is
ready?
gonna be fun, man.
Yeah, we've kind
Yeah.
of got about a 60-40 success rate, maybe 65-35. So
Okay.
I think you've got a good chance. Plus, the fact that you're bringing up "Oh Boy," like you're thinking outside the box. I like that. So when you're ready, just get us away with your throw your first question in the ring, and
All right.
we'll go ahead.
The first one was Kane Richard or Richard. I'm not sure how to say his last name. Was he
I think it's
playing on
Rashot.
this album? Rashad? Yeah. Was he on the
We'll
album?
go that. Yes,
Okay. Cool.
that's a good first question.
Let's see here. This Kane. Okay. So. Hmm. Was there a music video for this song?
Yes. Wow, you're on fire.
Hmm.
'Cause your first question,
um.
you've actually asked a lot of questions in one. That is a really good question because you mentioned album and then a band member from a certain time, and if it was toured. So sneaky.
Cool. Hmm. I'm trying to think of what music videos were on that. Okay. Atomic Man?
Are you asking? Is it Atomic Man?
Or was it is the song Atomic Man?
No,
Okay.
that was your third question.
Third question. Hmm. Was the song featured in a video game?
No, not to my recollection, but I believe no.
Yeah. Hmm. Modern Jesus? Is the song Modern Jesus?
And with 5 questions in, he makes light work of the song quiz. Well done, Daniel. The correct answer is Modern Jesus. Saluting to the bearded Jesus himself from when he was in New York. I just thought that was so, yeah, nice work there. Mocked that on real good. Yes, Modern Jesus
Thanks,
from
man.
2013. Yes, the redemption part of Evil Friends after the nightmare into the
Awesome.
redemption arc. Yes, what a good
Yeah.
song. Mon Jesus, one of the more popular ones as well from 10 plus years ago. Man, that's kind of weird to say, isn't it? Mon
That's
Jesus.
so weird to say. Yeah. What a cool music video that was too. Like him like traveling across the country and he was like showing different people and yeah.
Yeah, Dan, where did you get the inspiration for yours? Yeah, it's kind of maybe some crossover there. I don't know.
Exactly, right? Because
Maybe.
I was just thinking it's very similar. He's showing people in different like cultures across the country and it kind of goes in line with what we were talking about. So nice choice. Very fitting.
Maybe a little too easy. Next time I'll have to do like Endangered song or something. I don't know. Anyway,
Oh, I love. You know what's crazy? I got one of those vinyls. I
oh, you
received
got one?
one 10 years ago.
Oh shit. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there was there used to be before the Reddit board. It was called, I think, PTM Fan Lounge Forum. I think it was what it was called. It was a message
Right.
board that I was a part of. And it must have been. I'm guessing maybe it was Rich, but somebody posted, "Hey, like we're giving out like 400 of these. Like, send me a message with your address, and we're gonna randomly pick some people." And I was shocked when I got one. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I received one. Like, sweet, pretty cool.
Wow, that is. First of all, I'd never heard of this found lounge before, so you've opened a whole can of
Oh,
worms for me.
sweet.
I've never heard of this. Is
Cool.
this is news to me? I mean, I've had a couple of OGs on, and they've not mentioned this, so maybe I need to start asking about this because I kind of joined. I think I joined the Reddit in like 2018, 2019, something around that,
Yeah.
and the Discord is like pretty much as soon as
Cool.
it came out during the lockdown. So
Yeah.
anything beforehand was just, oh, they have a SoundCloud, great, and then whatever they put on YouTube, basically. So yeah,
Yeah.
what was it like then back then? Was it kind of similar to the way Reddit is? The
Yeah.
Reddit role was like
Yeah. For sure. But there wasn't nearly as many people for sure. Because I was
more
using it, I
underground.
think in 2000. Yeah, for sure. In 2010 to 2000, I think I was using it. Why I got that in 2014 is when I received that vinyl, I think.
Hmm.
So yeah, but it was called the PTM Fan Lounge Forum, is what it was called.
Shout out to anyone still
Yeah,
on the PTM fan
I
lounge.
know. We should look and see if it's still around, man.
Yeah, I'll do a little bit of digging now. I might know someone who might have been. There must be a couple of people who from back in the day were on there, or like at least checked it out.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's got to be. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. You've taught me something new today, which that's
Cool, man.
multiple things. But I did not know that. You stunned me a little bit. That's brilliant.
Right
Listen,
on, man.
listen, Daniel. Thank you very much for coming on. I think it was really good discussion. I really enjoyed the documentary. I can only recommend it to everyone. I mean, guys, it's he's not asking for £1 million or anything. It's a very well affordable. It's on a couple of good streaming services as well, so go check it out, anyone. If you want to promote anything now, nice opportunity. I know you already did at the beginning, but at the end, if anyone you want to promote any socials or anything, you're on Instagram and X or Twitter or whatever. We're not calling it X, but any other social
Mhm.
medias. The floor is yours. So
Thank you. Well, the first thing I want to do, man, is I want to thank you for starting this podcast. Like, it's so awesome to have a podcast about our favorite band, and I love the idea that, like that. First of all, the fact that you're dedicating, I know you put time and effort into this, and it's really cool. So I want to thank you for doing this.
oh, thank you. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, it's really cool, man. Because I know it takes time out of your schedule, and et cetera, and it's yeah, it's a joy to listen to. So and also it for me as the listener, it feels cool because it's like, okay, like there's other people and I feel connected to these people because we're all Portugal.TheMan fans. We're part of that family. So it's cool, man. And yeah, I'd say I would love it if people checked out the movie. It's called We Are All in This Together, and it's on Amazon Prime and Apple TV and Google Play. And then yeah, my Instagram, I'd love it if I'm actually setting up a tour for this summer. I've been showing the movie in different cities across the United States, and we raise money for the local homeless shelter from the ticket sales.
Oh,
So
wow.
what we're doing
That's
is,
sick.
yeah, I'm stoked about it, man. We've been renting out movie theaters in different cities, and then we have the local homeless shelter come and they speak before the movie about their different initiatives, etc. And then percentage of the ticket sales goes to them. And so I'm going to be doing that this summer. So I'd love it if people came to the shows. If the best way to follow along to see if we're going in your city, which we're going to hit like all the major cities, is to follow me on Instagram. The name is and then there's an underscore travelin, and there's no G in it. So it's the travelin and then underscore dude. And if you follow me on there, there'll be updates about the different cities we're gonna go. And I would love it'd be so cool to meet people out who listen to the podcast. Like actually at the events. That'd be so cool. So Hope to
That'd be
see some of
awesome.
you guys out there, and I really appreciate the support.
Yeah, I'll leave links down below as well. If you
Thanks,
can send me
man.
direct links as well afterwards
For sure.
for every streaming service as well, that'd be quite handy. And just to
Awesome.
make it like easy to use, people can just click a button and be like, oh, it's right there. So
Yep.
that'd be brilliant. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
If that's everything you wanted to say as well, anything else?
Yeah, that's everything I want to say. And shout out to the Portugal.TheMan community. You know, like again, like you guys have really showed up. You know, since Francis' diagnosis, it just really warms my heart to see how close knit of a community this is, and I feel so happy and honored to be a part of it and to be here with all of you guys, including you, Mark. So thank you, man.
No problem. All right, everyone. Thank you again for listening to a slightly special edition of the Purple, Yellow, Red, and Blue podcast. We'll probably go back to a more standard form unless we get another interesting guest on. But I felt like this was it was a cool opportunity to go for, and Daniel's been doing all these interviews telling about talking to people about bikes. I thought he's put like 15 minutes of Portugal.TheMan music into a documentary, and no one's asked him about it. So I thought someone's got to. So if I'm the only one, hey, fair enough. This is the place to talk about it. So again, thank you very
Yep.
much for coming on. Thank you for listening. Have a good one, guys. Take care and bye.